Hello and welcome to A Bit Too Much to Think. Today is the second episode in a series of episodes on what sovereign citizens often quote, and if you're not familiar with sovereign citizens, give them a Google, look them up. They're basically just people that think that really weird and piecemeal case law that's taken out of context can get them out of a traffic ticket. That's basically where you see them the most. And so, if you're like me, you might think, what the hell are they actually saying? Like, what is people versus battle? What does people versus battle actually say? So, in this series, I go over it, I discuss it, and we come to conclusions that they're basically wrong all the time. So, this one is people versus battle. This is one I hear a lot. They say that people versus battle found that traffic infractions are not crimes, or traffic violations are not crimes. And okay, let's talk about people versus battle because they're not necessarily wrong there, but they're wrong in their application. So people versus battle. Basically, this dude, his last name's Battle. He failed to maintain his brakes in a good condition, and as a result, some bad stuff happened. I actually don't know what happened. It doesn't say in the actual case law, other than the fact that his brakes were in bad condition and some people died as a result of it. So I'm guessing, he tried to slam on his brakes, they failed or something, and as a result, some people died. And so what happened is this Battle guy was charged initially with, he was fined for a traffic infraction, and he pleaded guilty, and then he changed it to nolo condere, which basically means I'm not going to plead guilty, but I can still be convicted because I don't have enough evidence to support my side. So on June 10th, 1974, he was fined I think it's like $65 or something. And again, he was basically fined for the traffic infraction of having bad brakes. So then on August 15th of the same year, so, 2 months later, there's a complaint filed against Battle charging him with 3 misdemeanor violations of some penal code because 3 deaths had occurred. And so essentially they tried to add manslaughter to the charges after he had already been tried for the bad brakes. And so what he did is he pled not guilty and once in jeopardy. So what it means when he's pleading in jeopardy, it means he cannot be tried for the same conduct. So basically, his attempt was, I already got tried for this issue, like, you can't try me again. And so the question really becomes, can they add this new manslaughter charge to the same problem, which is that he had bad brakes? And so first they look at another court case, which is Kellett versus Superior Court from 1966, where a guy complained that charges were added after he pled guilty to a case. And so in Kellett v. Superior, they point out that you can't have separate trials for multiple offenses committed at the same time, although you can get multiple punishments for multiple offenses that occur at the same time. So as an example, to make it make sense, if a guy killed 3 people, he can be given multiple stacking punishments. So he can get 50 years in prison for each murder and then get 150 years in prison. But that has to occur at the same trial. You couldn't try him for one murder and then, get him convicted of 50 years in prison and then turn around and be like, oh, we're going to try this convicted felon for 2 more murders. Maybe that'll get him the death penalty. Something like that. Which you can't do that. Because all the murders happen at one time. Now, if he were to murder someone, spend his 50 years in prison, go out and murder 2 more people, you could. But if it all occurs at the same time, you have to try it at the same time. So that's Kellett v. Superior. But going back to people versus battle, they actually say that it doesn't apply. Because first, the defendant knew that the case was still being investigated to see if they could add manslaughter to the charges, which is why he changed his plea to nolo condere so that, or contendere, Jesus Christ, words are hard. That's why he changed his plea so that he could get convicted and then get the fine and then get out without the manslaughter charges. That's why they did that. But it doesn't apply because the defendant knew that the case was still being investigated, and in Kellett v. Superior, the prosecutor at the initial outset knew or should have known about the possible extra charges that was added on to the guy. In People versus Battle, they didn't know if the manslaughter charge could actually be added until after some expert finished some investigation. And so the judge says that Kellett v. Superior doesn't apply because of those 2 reasons. The prosecutor did not know at the outset of the case whether or not manslaughter could be added. They were still investigating it, and the defendant knew that it was still being investigated. So Then the court goes on to say they don't think that traffic infractions are crimes, and this is where sovereign citizens are correct. Basically, what the court finds is that Kellett v. Superior dealt with multiple crime charges, but not an infraction and a crime charge. And so the court kind of looks at penal codes and says the California legislature doesn't consider them to be the same thing, because if they were, the penal codes are crazy inconsistent. But if they consider them to be different things, then the penal codes are very consistent. So it makes sense that, you have to kind of go with what makes sense, that the traffic infraction is not a crime. There was another case that they quoted from 1974, People versus Oppenheimer, that they said that infractions are petty offenses, and a trial of a petty offense doesn't get a jury trial. So basically what they find is, yes, a petty offense like an infraction, a traffic infraction in this case, doesn't get a jury trial. So this is an important thing to notice. It's not specifically traffic infractions that the court finds, but all infractions that are not the same thing as a higher offense. But here's the important part. An infraction still is an offense according to People versus Battle. They're basically just saying that a petty offense is not the same thing as manslaughter and really doesn't deserve the same kind of trial. And so that's really what People versus Battle is saying, and this is why it's taken out of context by the sovereign citizens. But also, this is important, cops can still pull you over for an infraction. It's a petty offense, it's still an offense. And that's what police do, is they police offenses at all levels. So it doesn't have to be a really serious public offense to be pulled over. So if you're just getting pulled over because your brake light is out, People versus Battle doesn't really apply, because the cops can still pull you over for that. Cops are not out there just stopping murder. They're also stopping things that cause public unsafety, like having a brake light out or driving without a license. That's what the cops do. That's kind of like a bigger part of their job than it is to stop murder. So that's why People versus Battle doesn't apply. Thank you to, I had a commenter on the previous video who pointed out that it was actually the state that argued that traffic infractions are not crimes, which was really interesting. So I really appreciate that little tidbit there. If you like this video, please give it a like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think. Thank you very much for listening, and have a wonderful day.